How many of you felt like snapping through that? Some of us. Man, it's good to be with you today. We are starting something new for the next few weeks called Better Together with a question mark, because we're going to look at some things that are good on their own, but are they better whenever they come together? If you missed the last few weeks, you missed something I thought was really good on Leviticus, and that maybe that's just me because I'm kind of a nerd that way when it comes to obscure books in the Bible that sometimes confuse people. So I just want to tell you right now, go out to our website and check those out. If this was your first time today, you might want to go listen to some of that stuff. But today, we move forward with Better Together. And I want to start first by asking you a question. What is your favorite color? Yell it out loud. What is your favorite color? If you're online, type it so we know what the favorite colors are. I heard a lot of red and blue. So my wife and I, whenever we first started dating, you ask little small talks, you get to know each other. And I asked her favorite color, and she said the rainbow, because they're all really, really good. And I thought that was just a cop-out. Can't choose. But hey, she's got good taste. She picked this guy. So anyway, back to colors. I want to tell you a few things about color. I did some scientific research online, which means I just found some weird internet website that says what your favorite color means about you and your personality. So see if this is you. All you red people in the room, raise your hand. Some of you, I can't really see, so I'm not going to put the rest of you through that. Red, it says, is an intense color. It's a color of desire and aggression, and therefore, if red is your favorite color, you are somebody who is driven, adventurous, and active. Is that you? Okay. Purple. Purple is the color that symbolizes mystery and spirituality, as well as royalty. Purple was one of the most expensive colors, pigments that they would use way back when, and so only royalty can afford them in their clothing. It says people who are purple, they tend to reflect royalty as they require great emotional security, but they are helpful to others. So if you're purple, you're a good person. Way to go. Pink says the color of romance. I didn't know that was pink. It says anyone who uses pink to express themselves is showing the world that they believe in and they want to be loved unconditionally and accepted by society. Now, blue, you blue people, I think I heard a lot of blues. And the most popular color, by the way, when people are asked, is blue, and it symbolizes peace and tranquility. If your favorite color is blue, then you are calm and you are trustworthy. You are a loyal person as you promote unity and security. Makes you blue people sound like really, really good people. Green is a common that's often associated with jealousy and greed, but it also signifies nature and good luck, like the four-leaf clover, and fertility and rebirth. It says this: overall, if you prefer green, you are committed to others, but there's a warning: you can be conceited or preoccupied with your own reputation. So green people, be careful. Well, now, my favorite color is orange. Any orange people in the room? Yeah, just a couple. Oh, by the way, 4% of the population say orange, so we are a rare breed. We're like good. But this is what it says about orange. If orange is your favorite color, you are a social person with a vibrant personality, as the color represents energy and warmth and enthusiasm. And if you know me very well, you know that is not me. So this is not scientific. This is just something made up on the internet, which is about 90% of the stuff on the internet. Remember that when you're on social media. Be kind to one another. Anyway, according to research, 4% of the population say orange is their favorite color. So it makes us a very rare segment of the population. And so today what I want us to do is talk about our faith and our church and all that stuff through the concept of the color orange. Because I have the stage and I have the orange shoes, we're going to go with orange. And to do orange, we're going to start with one of the colors that it takes to make orange, which is the color yellow. So that's where we're going to start today. And I'm going to begin in the Gospel of Matthew, and Jesus tells us this. He says, "You are the light of the world, a town built on a hill that cannot be hidden. He says, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl, and instead they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. He says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. You maybe have heard that verse if you're a church person growing up. If you were like me growing up in the 80s, you probably sang a song about putting, this little light of mine, that sort of stuff. And that's where this comes from, is this idea that Jesus says that we as the church have an influence in the world that nobody else has, and that we are like this light that is uniquely placed on this planet to display God's glory to the entire world. You could say that the role of the church is simply to be a light or to turn on the light, which is why I choose yellow. I choose yellow because those bulbs that are like really cold white, they weird me out. I like the more yellow ones. Again, this is all about me today. But yellow is the light. It's the church. And when the man John wrote the Revelation, he says, Jesus says this about the church. It's a strong reminder to us. Jesus says that the church is a lampstand. And people back then, whenever they would have read this or heard this, they would have known exactly what John was writing about because they understood a lampstand. To us, lampstands are kind of a foreign concept in the way that they were used back then. To us, we just have what? Lamps. And I guess a lamp stand today would be like a floor lamp, right? It stands on its own, upright. But back then, it was candles. It was a candle holder. You may have called it a menorah. But the Old Testament people would have understood this idea of a lampstand. They would have remembered in their Exodus, they're moving out of slavery into a new land, that God called them to put a lampstand in the tabernacle. The tabernacle for them was the portable church. It was a tent. It was before they actually had their temple. And so the lampstand was one of the very few things that God had told them to make sure was in the tabernacle, and he was specific about it. There was instructions on how the lampstand was to be built. There was instructions on what sort of oil to use in it and how to burn it. There was instructions on where it was to be placed and why it existed to illuminate a certain part in the temple. Now, except for God's presence in the inner sanctum of the tabernacle, it was the lampstand that was there representing to them the presence of God. And one of the priests of that time, his main job would have been to make sure the lampstand is always on. For us, it's simple, especially with LED bulbs. You can put it in a lamp, turn it on, and 6 years later, you might have to get a new one, right? But when it is a lampstand with oil, somebody every day has to check it. Now, another interesting detail about a lampstand, this is stuff you probably never knew you were going to learn today. There you go. This is a freebie. Lampstand in the tabernacle was strategically placed by a table that held loaves of bread called the shewbread. The shewbread, or called the bread of the presence. It was a reminder and a representation of what God had done in their lives and the very presence of God, the bread of the presence. And the lampstand itself was strategically placed next to the table for the sole purpose of illuminating the table and the shewbread, the very presence of God. The lampstand wasn't in the tabernacle to light the whole tabernacle up. It was there to illuminate the presence of God. The bread, which I think is interesting because Jesus uses bread to symbolize himself and his body. And so the lampstand, the church, existed to shine the light, yes, into the darkness, but to shine the light, to highlight God's goodness and God's faithfulness, reveal God's Son to the world. That's what the lampstand did in the tabernacle, illuminating just God. And I believe that's what we are called to do as a church, is to not necessarily illuminate everything, but make sure that we are illuminating Jesus and who he is. And we as a church, if the lamp starts to get dim or our light gets focused somewhere else, we need to continue to shine it on where it belongs, the very presence of God. The job of the church is clear. We are to keep the light burning. We are to keep it going. We need to keep it in its proper place, shining in the right direction. God's intention, I believe, is for the church to be placed strategically in the world, in the culture that we're in order to show the world Jesus, him. That's our primary focus. Our mission is to lead people to an active faith in Jesus Christ. It's to let people connect and understand Jesus and follow Jesus, the yellow, warm spotlight of Jesus. So that's yellow. What other color does it take to make orange? Red. You guys, you had like elementary school finger painting, right? And you got yellow. Anyway, that's red. And so I want to talk about red, but before I do, a quick question. How many of you, as a confession, be honest, how many of you, thought to yourself, I'm going to read the Bible, and I'm going to do great, I'm going to read it all the way through, and all of a sudden you get to one of those chapters that says, so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so. How many of you just skipped past that? Okay, see, good, honest people. Hey, I'm a pastor. I skipped through it too. You ever wonder why all of those lists and all that genealogy is in the Bible? Do you think it's maybe because back then they had some nerdy accountant sort of guy that just had to use a spreadsheet and they had to stick it in there? No, sometimes I've wondered, why are these in here? Because they don't really help on a very practical basis, on a daily basis. But here's why I think it's important that they're there. I think what's happening in here is God is showing us how his presence and his promise begins from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. In the book of Genesis, chapter 5, it begins like this is the account of Adam's family in his life. And then it goes forward to Noah and his family. Then it moves on to Terah, and Terah was the father of Abram, and Abram would later become Abraham. And Abraham would be the man that back in the 80s, we had this little song in Vacation Bible School called Father Abraham had many sons. Okay, come on, folks. But it would go on and on and on, and I think those are in there to help us understand that what started at one point, God continues in the next family, and the next generation, and the next generation. That somehow God doesn't just magically start right now. Although I am the center of my own universe. No, I realize that, I'm connected to people from thousands and thousands of years ago. I think these lists display that the family in every generation and generation is what God has been using to tell his story to the entire world. It's not just the church that tells the story of God. Otherwise, he would have listed church after church after church. No, what you see is people, persons, family after family. You see it from Adam all the way to Jesus, and you see it from the book of Genesis all the way to the book of Matthew. It's this future that keeps coming and coming. It's through the generations that God broadcasts his love and his joy and his peace and his presence to the generation that is yet to come. And I find it interesting that God uses families in the Bible. Fathers and mothers and daughters and sons and grandparents and all of those things. He uses them as a timeless platform to put his glory on display. In the Old Testament, God promises and he commands that we continue to pass down our faith from one generation to the next. Not through the church, not through an educational system, but through families. The heart of God was primarily taught through the family. And I think you know where I'm going to be going, but listen, I'm just kind of setting us up for the next couple weeks, and then we'll hit it out of the park right then. But God wants the family, which is what we're using the color red for, because we believe that God's heart is revealed through the heart of the family, the red heart of the family. Parents have a role that is critical in the next generation, and so does the church. Yellow and red. But here's the thing. I want to caution you, especially families and parents. A lot of Christian parenting books that I have read out there, they start with this premise and this idea that in order to be a great Christian parent, to be ideal mom and dad, you're somehow this super couple that have never gotten divorced, and you conduct morning devotions with each other, and you pray together every night, and you play contemporary Christian music all the time, and you've got your favorite verses in frames on your walls, and you stay neatly within the biblical guidelines of your roles, and you go to church every single week, and you tithe 10%. And listen, all of those things are really, really good. But all those things are really, really rare. Because the reality is, Most families don't look like that, especially biblical families. The problem is this: you don't find a lot of very good parenting examples in the Bible. You just don't. I'm being honest with you. The Bible, certainly, it has great advice for parenting. It's got some universal principles that can help us with all relationships. But the Bible certainly has its difficulties when it comes to parenting examples. You know, you're not going to convince me that David or Noah or Eli were exceptional parents. You're not. Don't even get me started on the Proverbs 31 woman. No, she's great, but what's her name? Anybody? There's no name. Why? Because she doesn't exist. It's an ideal that we want to live towards. The Bible is full of people that have all sorts of issues with parenting. And you might say, well, there were some good parents. What about Mary and Joseph? They raised Jesus and he turned out good, right? And I'm going to say, yes, they did. But come on, Jesus' dad was somebody else. Blended families. There you go. Adam and Eve, they might be a good example if they hadn't single-handedly caused the fall of humanity and hadn't raised two sons to the point where one would kill the other one. So if your kids haven't killed each other, literally, you're doing pretty good. So I don't know where I could just keep going. My point is this: parenting is hard. Families are messy. Even in the Bible, families were messy. Why? Was it because their parents were bad in the Bible? No. It's because their parents are human. And last I checked, we humans are messy. And we're messed up. And we have human issues. Noah had a human issue. He drank a little too much. Abraham had a human issue. He offered his wife to other men. Men, by the way, don't do that. Well, biblical family, don't go there. Rebecca, she schemed with her son to deceive her husband. Jacob's sons actually sold the youngest brother into slavery. David had an affair, and then a son grew up to try to overthrow him and kill him. Eli lost all control of how his boys acted in church, of all places. So by comparison to the Bible, and I look back over my life, my parents were awesome. Anybody else starting to feel encouraged? Maybe God's got all of these pictures and all these stories of all of these parents that are human to encourage you. Maybe, now listen, not to like compare yourself, like I'm bad, but I ain't that bad. But no, to encourage you to say, you know what, I'm human and they were human and they're just like me. Maybe that's why God has that in there. If I consider my own inherent faults and my personality quirks, and I'm pretty sure that I don't have what it takes to be an A-plus parent. I barely have what it makes to like be a D-plus parent some days. And even though my kids have all grown and they've moved out, what I'm starting to learn is you're still a parent. And people keep telling me grandparenting is a whole lot easier. One of these days I'll get to do that. But let me ask you this: what if parents and the family, or the parental people and their families, they started to see their families as the same way we see the church, as a God institution by which he can demonstrate who he is to the world, not just through the church, but through your family. Listen, I believe our humanness doesn't prevent us from demonstrating God's power. I think it's the exact opposite. I think the fact that we are human and we are messy magnifies what God can do through us all the more. It's an amazing thought when you realize that both the church and the home are comprised of both broken and imperfect and messy people, and yet somehow God uses all of that to change the world. That is awesome. Which brings me finally to the greatest color on earth, orange. Red and yellow, right, make orange. When you combine those, they're called primary colors. So when you combine the primary yellow of the church and the primary red of the home, I believe you get something incredible called orange. And what we're using this idea of orange is this: orange is the church and the family working together. You're going to hear this idea from time to time coming up, is to be orange. The color orange, it sends a variety of messages to the world. For one, it symbolizes health. For instance, oranges, which, by the way, did the color get the name from the fruit or the fruit get the name from the color? Anything rhyme with orange? Ooh, it's door hinge, that one. But oranges are related with health because like oranges and tangerines and carrots and sweet potatoes, those sorts of things are known to have beta-carotenes and vitamin C, that stuff that we need. Orange is what people use to wear to help be visible. Like when you're going down I-44 and it is blocked up, it's often because there are these beautiful little orange cones just laying right there in your way, or people with what color vests on? Orange. Why? So you can see them and you won't hit them. Orange is this incredible color. I believe that orange is one of God's favorite colors because coming up in a couple months, when you go driving through the countryside, all the trees will have these varying shades of orange. And I would even contend this for my reasoning behind why God loves orange is because when you wake up in the morning and you can see the sunrise, what color is it? And at night, when the sun goes down, orange. So as a church, we want you to take this often overlooked, second class, 4% color and begin to think orange. Orange is what happens when yellow and red combine their efforts. Think about it this way. If you were going to do a painting and all you had were reds, you can only do a painting that red could do. If all you ever had was yellow, you can only do a painting that yellow could do. When you combine the two, you have so much more possibility, so much more potential. That is the idea about orange. It's the advantage of using two things that are great to create a third option. And now here's the thing, I bet most of you are like, duh, I know this whole combining thing and great thing, but listen, this is how the world changes. I came across a story a couple weeks ago in New Mexico, and their children and youth and their family departments, there was two ladies, Ellie Ortiz and Diane Granito, that had decided that their life's mission was to help children, especially older children and sibling pairs and trios, and so to be adopted. And what they realized is that it was difficult to actually adopt those segments of children. And so they had this idea to suggest that the right photos, just the right images, might actually get potential homes to actually look at these children with the personality that they actually had. Because up until this time, people would go and they would be talking about adoption, they would show pictures, and the pictures were usually of the kid just sitting there with a blank background, kind of disheveled, maybe smiling, or maybe smirking, or maybe none of the above. And they thought to themselves, there has to be a different way. And so what they did is they approached artists and art galleries and said, would you please come and take pictures of these children and capture their spirit and their essence? And in 2001, they opened up their very first art gallery. And at that time, 1,000 people attended this, and inquiries about these age of children and pairs actually doubled. And since then, because of national coverage and everything that's going on, more than 60 new art galleries have opened up all the way across the country. And it's hard to imagine how many children's lives were impacted and made better because of one photo, one picture. Doesn't that kind of give you goosebumps a little? See, this is orange. Heart Galleries is thinking orange, an adoption agency whose heart is all about great things for kids, combined with the passion and the resources of art galleries, give kids a better chance. When two entities, like the church and the home, leverage their talents and their influence together, they can do remarkable things. And I learned this especially back when I was little. When I was a little kid, I just have to confess, I had an addiction problem. And it started as early as like 6 or 7. And in part, it was the church's fault. But also, it was TV's fault. Because in 1980, this commercial came on and my world exploded. Watch this.
chocolate
is in my peanut butter.
It's doggone good.
You get two great tastes in one candy bar. Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. Real milk chocolate. Delicious peanut butter. Two great tastes that taste great together. Reese's or Reese's Crunchy. Topped with chopped peanuts.
Okay, real quick. How many of you remember that commercial? Yes. Chocolate and peanut butter. Great things, right? Man, I have peanut butter almost every single day. My wife has chocolate almost every single day. But what they learned is you put them together. Anyone? And here's the thing is I blame the church for my addiction because back whenever I grew up, we have these Bible drills and you had to memorize verses. And so if you memorize your verse, you could show up and you could say it. And this is what I got. And so they'd be like, and they would tell me, now, Ben, listen, there's two in here, which means you can have one and you can share them. And I'm like, if they wanted theirs, they should have memorized their verse. And to this day, this is my favorite candy that anybody from the church can put in my mailbox in the hallway right over there. And what color is the wrapper? Orange. Two great things brought together to do something incredible. And I'm not talking about peanut butter cups. The church and the family. So listen, we are going to explore the next couple weeks what can happen if the church and the home, we combine our efforts for the sake of teaching and impacting our children and the next generation and the generation after that. Because I believe as long as churches just do what churches can do, that's all the results you're going to get is church stuff. And as families, if all we try to do is what families can do, we're going to do good things, but it's only family stuff. And when we combine the two together, I believe we have world-changing stuff. Well, imagine what the solution might be for the next generation if we actually adopt this way of living, orange, with the yellow of the church and the red of the family. What if both were blended? So here's the deal. The church and the family, I believe, are needed by this world, and they need each other. We need each other, and too much is at stake for us to fail. The primary task is to build God's kingdom, to lead people to an active faith in Jesus Christ, in their hearts and their minds and their souls and their strengths, and it all begins with orange. So let's wrap up this way. A knock-knock joke. I know, unusual. Knock-knock. Orange. Aren't you glad you're at church today? Come on, that's good. All right. There you go. I wasn't looking for it, but listen. As I always say every time I preach, every time I end worship, is whatever you hear, feel, or experience, it's free to take with you. Maybe something today wasn't earth-shattering. Maybe it didn't just reveal something completely new today, but maybe it's tickled something or it has inspired something. Don't leave that here. Go out and be orange this week. Let's pray together. God, I simply ask that you help us in the midst of our life to see how we can partner with you, that we can shine the light of Jesus out into this world, that we as a church and as families, we can invest in the next generation and we can lead them to who you are so that they may find life. God, help us to take what we have felt, what we have heard, and what we have seen with us. And then, God, I pray for parents out there or grandparents who feel like they have not lived up to a standard, that they've read the books or they've read the articles and somehow they have missed the mark. God, I pray that you give us, not them, us, because I'm one, encouragement. Encouragement to be better, encouragement to just accept our humanness. So God, change us today because we spent time together in worship of you. I pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.